And in that regard, with all due respect to both the Turkish and the Israeli government, they have not, I don't believe, respectfully acted in the best interests of either nation or either people. And I hope that both governments can learn from this deeply tragic lesson that neither side is served well in this regard. Now, what to do, and I will stop. The Turkish government has asked for an apology, and they have asked for an international commission. With respect to the commission, I think the Israelis and the American government have reached a rather reasonable conclusion. And the Turkish position regarding the International Commission, while it is entirely reasonable, I think does not pay enough homage to the history of the Israeli government in terms of the validity of its own commissions. It can very easily be argued that actually Israel, more than any other nation on earth, when they create an internal commission with a serious Supreme Court jurist at its head, offers more critical, more credible reports than any international commission could ever do.
Pardon me, Congressman, you have 1 minute.
1 minute. Okay.
Just trying to break the tension.
So I would respectfully suggest allow that commission to play its role. With respect to an apology, I would encourage the Israeli government to initiate an expression of sorrow and regret and acknowledgement of the emotions and the feelings of the Turkish people in regard to this flotilla incident, and make an entree with the Turkish government to begin a process to address the legitimate concerns of the Turkish government as to the aggrieved families and compensation. Both sides need to turn down the heat. Both sides need to understand that actually, in many respects, both the Turkish and the Israeli governments are expressing legitimately held emotions and feelings and beliefs.
Thank you, Congressman Wexler.
Done.
Thank you. We'll now turn to Karim Sadjapur to talk about Turkey and Iran. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, and thank you all very much for coming. I believe I'm the only one invited here to speak today who's not an expert on Turkey. I'm part Azeri, and I have a great affection for Turkey. And I was going over some opinion polls in Turkey to get a better sense of the popular mood, and I was just in Turkey a few weeks back. And I happened to notice that Iran and the United States seem to be in competition with one another for the lowest favorability ratings among Turks. So I thought that given my dual U.S.-Iran nationality, I know how divided the Turkish polity is, but perhaps my small contribution today can be to unite all of you together against my presentation today. When I think about the Middle East, it helps me to think in metaphors and to compare Turkey's role in the region and Iran's role in the region. I was thinking to myself that Turkey, over the course of the last decade, has planted a lot of fruit trees throughout the region and carefully watered them, carefully cultivated them, and reaped the benefits. Many of you know that Arab foreign investment in Turkey has increased tenfold over the course of the last decade. And in comparison, I would say that Iran plants a lot of barren trees throughout the Middle East and waters them with a fire hose. There's very little Arab foreign investment in Iran, and to the contrary, Arab governments tend to vote against Iran in international fora. I think, however, and we can go into more detail in the question session, that Turkey has begun taking some cues from Iran in terms of overwatering some of the seeds they planted in the region. And there is a danger that they're alienating one of their key allies, of course, the United States. In terms of the Turkish-Iranian relationship, obviously there's an important commercial relationship happening. I believe last year Turkey imported about a third of its gasoline from Iran. And I understand that aspect of it, but as I'm reviewing kind of Turkish popular sentiment, I am wondering if the current government in Turkey is not somewhat out of step with the popular mood. And there was a poll which just came out a couple of days ago from Pew, which is a very reputable polling agency, which I thought had some very interesting findings. One that I saw is that 69% of the Turkish public has an unfavorable view of Hamas. 73% has an unfavorable view of Hezbollah. And over 60% have unfavorable views of Iran and Ahmadinejad. 63% of Turks oppose Iran's nuclear ambitions. So it seems to me that there is somewhat of a disconnect between the popular mood in Turkey and some of the policies of the Turkish government. And I know there's great pride now taken in Turkey about Turkey's increasing soft power and in the Arab world, and how Prime Minister Erdogan has eclipsed President Ahmadinejad in terms of his popularity in the Arab world. But I think as a cautionary note, we should note that the most popular leader, foreign leader in the Arab world is Hugo Chavez of Venezuela. So that's not necessarily a great metric to measure your foreign policy by. Now, let me talk a little bit about the view from Tehran vis-a-vis Turkey. I think it's the Turkish belief that they can moderate Iranian foreign policy, and it's the Iranian belief that they can radicalize Ankara. And in the aftermath of Iran's contested presidential elections last summer, I think among the various things which took place was that any lingering moderates or pragmatists that were part of the Iranian government's decision-making structure have been purged from the system. So you now have a political color spectrum that ranges from pitch black to dark gray in Tehran. And the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei has surrounded himself by like-minded hardliners who I think have two overarching political instincts, particularly vis-a-vis the United States. One is mistrust, and the other is defiance. And for many years now, many people, including myself, have argued that if you engage Iran, you try to reintegrate it into the international community, you try to open up its economy, this is going to expedite and facilitate political reform in Tehran. And I think what we were naive to understand is the fact that Iran's hardliners understand that argument very well. And for precisely that reason, someone like Ayatollah Khamenei is at best ambivalent, if not downright hostile, to the idea of opening up to the outside world, because he recognizes that it would dilute his hold on power. And I think the irony of the Obama administration's engagement approach toward Iran is that it failed to achieve what it intended to do, which was to moderate Iran's nuclear ambitions. But it succeeded in doing what it didn't intend to do, which was to catalyze Iran's democracy movement. I think it became very clear to Iranians and much of the world that whereas the Bush administration's hardline approach kind of united Iran's competing political factions against a common threat, the Obama administration's engagement approach accentuated Iran's internal divides between, I would argue, the vast majority of a very young population that wants to do away with this death to America culture of 1979, and a hardline minority which has a monopoly of coercion,